right? He's gone to New Hampshire. He's constantly nipping at Trump's heels. He's always criticizing the president. He makes a living going on left-wing fake news to trash the president. So his intentions are clear.
But Zalestowski says what is not clear is whether he'll run as a Republican or an independent.
We've looked at this and we said, okay, if he runs as an independent, for instance, in the general election, then we think he would take as many votes from Democrats as he would from Trump. And so we don't know that that will have any real effect, but it depends on who the Democratic nominee is.
But Zalestowski is convinced that Kasich wants to be president. I'm Chad Groening.
A special panel is leaning toward banning assisted suicide in Canada based on psychiatric reasons.
Doctor-assisted suicide was legalized 2.5 years ago, forced on Canadians by the nation's Supreme Court, and Parliament set the guidelines, which includes gray areas of the law. Alex Schattenberg of the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition tells AFN the Council on Canadian Academies has looked into 3 areas of possible expansion to people that would qualify, and one would be those seeking it for psychiatric reasons.
So in Canada right now, you can't have euthanasia if you're not, quote, quote, nearing death, but that's not defined. So in fact, a psychiatric condition does qualify for euthanasia, but they must also be nearing death. So there's a bit of gray area in the whole question of psychiatric conditions as it is standing right now.
The Academy's report states that if near death is eliminated for psychiatric patients, the gate would be wide open for expanding euthanasia, including those experiencing natural depression over sad events in their lives.
And this is what they're acknowledging. According to how the law is written, if we do this, if we allow this, everyone would qualify, and that would create a serious problem. They made this statement that Canada would become the most liberal euthanasia regime in the world if we were to allow it for psychiatric suffering alone.
Even Belgium, where euthanasia of psychiatric patients has been allowed, is questioning the ethics of the practice. I'm Charlie Buck.
It's time to call your senators. We need to tell them to put an end to the Liberals' filibuster, switch to a majority vote, and defund Planned Parenthood. Call the Capitol Switchboard at 202-224-3121 or go to afaaction.net. Senators respond to constituent calls. So call 202-224-3121 and tell your senators to switch to a majority vote and defund Planned Parenthood. Your call will make a difference.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
All the people who make these Hitler comparisons, which are never apt. We should just stop doing that. These Hitler comparisons, 5 years from now, 6 years from now, when this deal holds, we'll come back and say, I said a lousy thing back in 2015.
She's not alone. The number of classes geared toward teaching adults how to adult is growing. Rachel Flahinger co-founded the aptly named Adulting School in Portland, Maine. This month, she's launching online classes geared toward millennials anywhere who want to know how to sew a button, understand modern art, or tell someone they love them.
How to have a relationship.
What a crowd, what power, what beautiful people. I see you all week, and now I have to see you once again to wish you a very, very Merry Christmas.
Now, Stacey Washington.
Welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being here today. It's Monday, and we're back in the saddle. We have so much to discuss, so many things going on. But first of all, Jesus is the reason for the season. Merry Christmas, and thank you for your participation in our wristbands effort here at American Family Radio. We are just so excited to see those all over the place. And please don't forget to post pictures of you wearing your wristbands from AFA, your Christmas-colored Christmas wristbands. Post those photos on the postable area of the Stacey on the Right show page or the AFA page or the American Family Radio page. Go over and post those images so we can see you in action with your wristbands on. That's exciting. I love it when people post pictures of themselves drinking out of their Stacey on the Right show mugs. And so anything you're doing where you're partnering with us, let's bling it up on social media. Let's have some fun with it. We're doing it to bring Jesus back to the central focus point of Christmas, but there's no reason why we can't have fun doing that. So welcome into the program today. here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. So excited to be with you. We are going to be talking about millennials taking adulting classes, which include lessons on how to cut an onion, how to say, I love you to someone. Yes, you heard that right. So we'll be talking about that. We are also going to speak to Angela Morabito, contributor to the Washington Examiner. She's coming on because she's very excited about the First Step Act. And we've had people on the show who have been very supportive of it. Actually, National Center and Project 21 recently put out a statement last week, actually. It was just the end of the week. And you can find it at the Stacey on the Right Show page. And we've denounced, I wouldn't say denounced. We are separating ourselves off because there are still some very problematic areas of the First Step Act, areas of concern that have not been addressed that would permit violent felons access to early release. And we're interested in seeing those things addressed before the bill would move forward. Now, unfortunately, we're looking at the bill moving forward now. We're looking at Mitch McConnell trying to bring it up. And that means that we have to choose a position. We either support it or we don't. So at the National Center for Public Policy Research, and specifically Project 21, we're calling for these changes before our support can be offered. So, we've spent time at the White House meeting with staffers about our blueprint of 57 policy recommendations called the Blueprint. And we feel like we have some inroads there, but we haven't been getting as much traction on getting some changes made to the First Step Act. No meetings, no offers of getting in there and having some discussions about it. So we'll speak with Angela Morabito. She's a contributor to the Washington Examiner, and we're gonna turn this issue over a little bit. That'll be in the next segment, and then we'll get into in the last segment that you heard the tease in the beginning of the show. These millennial, they're people, okay? They're some of them fantastic, talented people, but they've come up in homes where they had a super mom who did everything for them. And now they're out in the real world and they've graduated from college and they have their own place and they're having a tough go. And this is the generation that has the largest percentage of people who are still living at home, and also the largest percentage of people who are living at home and are not attending school or gainfully employed. So basically just living at home. Like, I only have one child left at home who lives that way. Two of our children have jobs, not enough to support themselves outside of the house, but they don't qualify for the definition that was used for this survey as these millennials do, who are college educated, some of them, many of them, and in their early 30s. I have teenagers who are outdoing these kids. So I think it's the home environment, and we'll get into that. And we'll take your calls also, 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. So first off, let's get into the Daily Confession. Today, we're going to talk about holding fast to Christ. It's Hebrews 3, verses 1 through 14, King James Version. Wherefore, holy brethren, partakers of the heavenly calling, consider the apostle and high priest of our profession, Christ Jesus, who was faithful to him who appointed him, as also Moses was faithful in all his house. For this man was counted worthy of more glory than Moses, inasmuch as he who has builded the house has more honor than the house. For every house is built by some man, but he that built all things is God. And Moses verily was faithful in all his house as a servant for a testimony of those things which were to be spoken after. But Christ as a son over his own house, whose house are we, if we hold fast the confidence and the rejoicing of the hope firm to the end. So what are we talking about here? Well, we have come to share in Christ if we hold firmly till the end the confidence that we had at first. This is about maintaining our spiritual integrity and holding on to Jesus, because faithfulness to him is the ultimate in religious security. It outdoes any assurances that we have from man-made governments or other people, or even our own churches and where we attend and we tithe and we faithfully serve and try to make a difference. Even a church home can become corrupted. A church leader can fall or go astray, and it can leave members shaken, which is why, as much as we want to serve and spend time in church and do all that we can, from the tithing to the serving to the regular attendance, we still have to realize that churches are comprised of people and that our ultimate hope has to be rooted and grounded in Jesus Christ. So is our allegiance to God pure and true and complete? There are a ton of pressures that we go through And sometimes those pressures, if we allow them to, can draw us away from our allegiance to Christ. We're talking about peer pressure, people who just don't want you to, personal lusts, philosophies that creep in and make us doubt whether or not what we believe is true. Even doctrinal issues where people, some people believe one thing, some believe another. That can be a wedge point where the enemy can try to pry you away from your faith. We can't allow that. Sometimes the pressuring of other people, while they may be well-meaning, serves to fuel these doubts. But we must remain faithful to Christ in all things. So, in Hebrews 3, the Hebrew people are facing a similar dilemma to what has been described here. Some are thinking of reverting to their former ways, which for them was Judaism. They're thinking, it's a good religion, isn't it? It came from God, right? It will be much easier for us to follow because we won't have to face such opposition from family and friends because, they're still practicing Judaism, and we know the tenets of Judaism. We won't have to struggle to learn. We don't have to change our habits or our practices. And the same sort of thing can be said about many of our religious backgrounds. The author of Hebrews argues for these people not to return to Judaism. Instead, why we need to remain faithful to Jesus in actions, thoughts, attitude, and doctrine. Now, listen, we're not talking about returning to Judaism here, but we are talking about a return to the secular nature that really that's what we're at war with. The flesh that desires that we would satisfy any and every urge and desire that we have, as opposed to our spirit man, which is unified with Christ and is seeking sanctification. And those two elements, we're continually putting down the flesh, killing the flesh, so that we can achieve that aim of growing closer and closer to Jesus. So in anything that we're considering about our faith, Jesus has to be central to that. And he called us to discipleship. He himself had disciples, and he calls us to emulate him in that aspect by discipling others. And in discipling and leading others to Christ, we strengthen our faith to him. We strengthen our faith walk so that we're able to withstand, really, it's everywhere you look, from the displays at Barnes & Noble's, which is nothing but leftism for the kids, the displays at Barnes & Noble's that are foisting the leftism off on the adults, the television shows, the radio programs, the music, which constantly ferrets in these negative thought patterns and really ungodly messages just pounding in your ear to the beat of music over and over and over again. That is a constant onslaught 24 hours a day. So the answer is, first of all, we got to be in that regular appointment with God in the morning. First thing, give him that time, have your devotions in your morning prayer, and then you're starting the day off running. Then it's a constant conversation, speaking with him, giving him our every prayer and thought, all of the things that we're concerned with, the worries, quote unquote, we entrust those to him. The complaints. Yes, I said complaints. Your complaints about this one or that one. Instead of picking up the phone and calling a friend and engaging in gossip, tell your father, tell him about this person so he can comfort you, so he can enable you to continue to not just deal with this person, but to enjoy them and to be in relationship with them, right relationship, because there is no person who's always going to please you. So we have to yield ourselves to the leading of the Holy Spirit so that we can deal with even the most difficult people. And in doing those things, including reading our Bible and engaging in Bible study and small group and going to church weekly, it's a must that we're in the pew on Sunday or Saturday, if that's for you, to get the message so that we can be refreshed. And then praise and worship. It sounds like I'm giving you a list of a whole bunch of legalistic things that you need to do in order to be right with God. Not at all. You're going to be led to do any number of those things in the way that God has for you to do them, but I'm listing them off because we have so many options to beat back the secular culture and to focus on God. And we often we operate in this world like we don't have these options. The same commentary that we've made many times on the show about the addiction to smartphones and social media, you can also say, oh, wow, well, but if you're having screen time, that screen time could be on the Bible app. That screen time could be on YouVersion. That screen time could be on your Audible app, listening to a Christian book, or your BSF app, listening to your lecture notes from last week. It's a choice that we have. So I encourage you. My encouragement for you today is that the tools are here. The options are available to us. We need only access them. We don't have to be a part of the generation that's losing their faith and returning to the old ways because they don't see a way forward that they can walk with Jesus. That is the narrow way, but it's the best way and only way to an eternity with him. So I know we had a caller. I'm not sure if we're still there. Yeah, let's quickly take this call. Ernest in Michigan. Thank you so much for calling the show today.
Can you hear me, Stacey?
Yes, I can hear you.
Stacey, my beautiful sister in the Lord. I just want to say it is a pleasure to talk to you. I thank God for your boldness, your tenacity, your intelligence. You don't back down on the issues. You are a brave soldier in the Lord, but yet you are humble. I love the fact that God has placed you on the radio to deal with all this mess that we're living in, the things that Jesus said would happen before his second advent. And I just want to say to you, my beautiful, bold sister, keep on doing what you're doing. Don't back down. And I pray God's protection over you and your family. And no matter what, that's the way I am. Stand for the truth. You are a special, special person. Your voice is anointed. The way you come across is anointed. And I know it's all because of God, our Father. I thank you very much. Keep on doing what you're doing, Stacey.
Thank you. Thank you for calling in today and for your kind words. I give all glory to him. This is for him, through him. I'm doing this because this is what God has for me to do. Thank you so much. We will be back with more. In fact, we're going to have Angela Morabito, contributor to the Washington Examiner, right after these messages. Keep it here.
Are you still stuck on the healthcare roller coaster? Still paying those high premiums? And strapped into huge deductibles? Not knowing what's around the next turn? Well, then let me tell you about a sound, sensible healthcare choice that really is affordable. It's MediShare, the healthcare sharing solution people like you have been trusting in for more than 25 years. MediShare members report saving around $500 a month on their healthcare costs, and they never pay for things they don't believe in. Time to say goodbye to that healthcare roller coaster and say hello to MediShare.
Call ** 345 to find out how much you can save on your healthcare. MediShare. Call ** 345. Message and data rates may apply. That's ** 345.
Hello, I'm Pastor Joseph Parker, and this is Daily Time in the Word. It's our goal to help you better understand the great blessing of spending time in God's Word every single day.
In the Word of God, specifically in the book of Psalms, we find in Psalm 91 a powerful weapon of protection. The first words of Psalm 91 tell us, verses 1 and 2, "He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in Him I will trust." I would challenge and encourage you and each member of your family to pray Psalm 91, a prayer like this one. Today we dwell in the secret place of the Most High, and so we abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Today we say of the Lord, "You are our refuge and our fortress, our God, in you do we trust." Surely you deliver us from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence. You cover us with your feathers, and under your wings do we trust. Your truth is our shield and buckler, and so we are not afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flies by day, nor for the pestilence that walks in darkness, nor for the destruction that lays waste at noonday. 1,000 may fall at your side, and 10,000 at your right hand, but it shall not come near us. Only with our eyes do we look and see the reward of the wicked. Because we have made the Lord our refuge, even the Most High our habitation, no evil will befall us, nor does any plague come near our dwelling. For you give your angels charge over us to keep us in all our ways. They bear us up in their hands, lest we dash our foot against a stone. We tread upon the lion and the cobra, the young lion and the serpent we trample underfoot. Because we have set our love upon you, therefore you deliver us. You set us on high because we have known your name. We call upon you and you answer us. You are with us in trouble. You deliver us and honor us. With long life you satisfy us and show us your salvation. In Jesus' name, amen.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being here. While we're working on getting our guest, we have time for other calls. You can join the show at 866-963-2037. 866-963-2037. And I want to also point you to, I have this link here. I just checked the Facebook page, and I'm always like, oh, it's on the Facebook page. Well, it's not actually there, except now it is. I just put it up there. So you can read at nationalcenter.org our comments and things that we're concerned with on the First Step Act. We're concerned with quite a bit of things that have to do with this could be harmful to minority communities. And I know that's antithetical to what you're being told about the First Step Act. It's like, hey, it's got to be good for all communities. It's got to be good, especially for the Black community. But just because something has to do with shortening prison sentences doesn't mean it's automatically good for the Black community. That is kind of simplistic, and we have to be a little bit more far thinking than that. So I encourage you to check out our press release and our article that we have. And I'm just concerned that that in our haste, and when I say our, the Republicans, in their haste to have something that they can point to that they're doing, quote unquote, for minority communities, that this is going to be pushed through and it'll have a similarly wide-ranging deleterious effect, similar to what happened with the crime bill, which, again, Blacks in America were clamoring for this bill, the Clinton crime bill, to get criminals off the street. But the pendulum swung in such a tough direction that people were serving extended prison sentences for crimes that they would not normally spend decades in prison for. And so now, people are saying, no, too many Black people are being incarcerated for minor offenses. And the answer is not to say, well, everyone gets early release. We need something better than that. We need some middle ground. And this is part of the problem that we have with our what we're doing with prison reform, with all of it. It's, we get an idea, we have a bill, we have something going on, and then what happens? We don't get what we're looking for. We get something, but it's not what we're looking for. So I'm just sending this over to my producer because I have time right now on my show sheet. We're supposed to be speaking to Angela Morabito, Washington Examiner contributor. So in addition to that, I was talking to you a little bit in the beginning about some cultural issues. And there's this story out that kind of goes to the reason why we have so much dysfunction in relationships between women and food, women and their bodies. And I'm speaking about Nigella Lawson. Now, she's from Great Britain, and she's a very, very popular chef over there. And she's had a television show and numerous cookbooks here in the United States she's really been around a while. And now she has the opportunity to have a billboard in LA advertising some of her new show. It's a new television show called The Taste. And she explains that the taste is like The Voice television show. It's a competition. It's like that, only replace the singing with food. So it sounds fun. Sounds uplifting and upbeat. So what we're looking at is she's got this billboard that they wanted to put up in Los Angeles to promote the show. And ABC reached out to her and said, well, we've got your images and we've chosen one that we think is fantastic. And they're all images of her, basically a full-on shot of her standing up in a dress. And the dress is, by any standard, it's not racy at all. She looks very much like someone who's promoting something, middle of the road, fun, good fun stuff. Well, what she says is that they said, look, we want to Photoshop your tummy to make her tummy really thin and narrow and flat. Well, it turns out that she said no. She even went to her blog and made a post, and here's a little quote from it. Although it was very thrilling to think of being up on a billboard in LA and around the United States, I was very strict in English and told them they weren't allowed to airbrush my tummy out. Wise? But the tum is the truth and has come by honestly, as my granny would have said. So I support that completely. I think if more women embraced the natural curvature of their bodies and the natural look of being, I think being thin is great, and it's completely appropriate, but it's also okay to not be rail thin if that's not your natural body composition. And she is naturally curvier, and so that would be wonderful for her to just acknowledge and for them to allow her to be herself instead of airbrushing and photoshopping out the natural look of herself. It's basically like they want to put her head on someone else's body. So right now it's my pleasure to welcome Angela Morabito. She's a contributor to the Washington Examiner. Angela, thank you for joining the show today.
Thanks for having me, Stacey.
Okay, you're a little low in my ear. I'm wondering if my producer can turn you up a little bit because I can barely hear you. So you're coming on to talk to us today about the First Step Act. Tell us where you stand on supporting the bill and why.
Sure. Well, the First Step Act will come up for a cloture vote today at 5:30 in the Senate. The First Step Act is, just as it sounds, a first step toward criminal justice reform. It would allow inmates in the federal penitentiary system to potentially get released early if they are nonviolent criminals, and if they participate in certain programs and behave well, they can essentially earn their freedom a little bit earlier. It also provides $250 million to programs that will be studied to see how well they help people reintegrate back into society. And chief among those programs is education and getting people up to speed with a high school education and with technical skills they can use to go get a job.
Okay, so I love all of that. Sounds wonderful. Those are great things. But what about the early release for people who've committed carjackings, but they haven't actually killed anyone? Or some of the other violent offenses that people are in prison for who will also be eligible for early release?
Well, there's a whole list of offenses that are not part of the First Step Act. If someone has committed violence against a police officer with a weapon, if someone has hurt a romantic partner or a child or, participated in some sort of aggravated assault, it is exceedingly unlikely that they would ever be able to use this program. And what it does, regardless of what crime the person is in there for, is it puts them in something called like post-incarceration custody. So they are still looked after. Somebody's still checking up on them. But think of it as a halfway point between being free and on your own and locked up in prison. It's a halfway step where you can kind of test and see how well is this person going to do when they're off the state radar entirely. Outcomes for that have been studied, and they're really, really good. This idea of, okay, well, you've got someone who's been behind bars probably for multiple years, most sentences are at least 5 years, so somebody spent a significant chunk of time separated from society at large. And what we're learning is that just letting them go and saying, okay, have someone come pick you up and figure it out, that makes people way more likely to recidivate and to go back to committing crime because they have no idea what else to do. The world sends, whatever the length of their prison sentence is, the world has spent that time moving forward. And if that person can't keep up with technology or doesn't understand how to use a cell phone that's on the market or doesn't understand where to go to get, like, basic services, odds are really, really high that they're going to end up back in the criminal justice system. The rearrest rate for federal inmates is about 49.3% over the next 8 years from their release from prison. But if they have that second step in the middle, and if they have a high school degree, the odds of them committing another crime go way down.
Okay, so I've had other guests on, Angela, where we've been really, like, they've been just as excited as you are about the program, and I think we do need substantial changes made to the federal prison system in how people are rehabilitated, because it shouldn't just be we're locking you up, we're leaving you in here, and when you're done, if you ever get out, then we're just basically unlocking you and pushing you out the door to try to deal with a world that has radically changed, especially for people who've been in prison for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Like you said, they can't even use technology. Everyone's holding a cell phone. They are not aware of how it works or what exactly it does. So how do we get the kind of kinks out of it before it's passed? Because the worst thing in the world is well-intentioned legislation that goes forward and is pushed through because we have to do something. And then in the end, the unintended consequences are worse than the original situation.
Right. I think the Senate has a strong version of the bill right now. This bill has gone through multiple iterations of edits. The most recent one was that people who are convicted of female genital mutilation, which is a horrific crime, it's an absolutely horrible, horrible thing to do to someone, that crime was just added to the list of things that will not be eligible for early release under the First Step Act. I think if there's one thing that we need to make absolutely sure of, it's that we've thought of every single crime as a society that we want to exclude from this. And if you look at the list, most of the crimes on it show like a real moral issue. It's not like, oh, I was selling drugs because I was out of money and because it's the one thing I knew how to do. These are crimes of, like, I went and hurt someone on my own volition, or I've done it repeatedly. So crimes with real moral issues, getting someone a high school diploma, the fear then is it just makes them a smarter criminal. So there's definitely still more work to do.
I agree. So is there a possibility of that work that you're talking about that happens, you're saying, after the bill is passed? Because what I'm seeing now is people are pushing forward and they're moving to support the bill so that Mitch McConnell can get the votes to get it done.
Right. So hopefully the Senate will move for cloture today at 5:30. If that happens, it is not necessarily smooth sailing for the bill going forward. It would still face a floor vote, and then it would have to go to the House. And there are a handful of congressmen in the House who say, we need to take our time on this. We need to make more edits. And they're very aware of what's happening with the bill, so they're working on it already. I would expect there to be additional negotiation between the Senate and the House, particularly committee members on Homeland Security and crime, because the last thing we want is someone who's convicted of anything related to terrorism being able to play nice for a few years and then get out and go right back to committing crimes against America. But that negotiation between the Senate and the House can't happen unless they vote yes on cloture.
Okay, so those things, the reform things that you're talking about, so we get the cloture going and then they start really working the bill. That's what we're to understand.
I mean, there's been a lot of work done on this bill already, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's done. I want to see what changes the House would make to this bill. I think there's certainly more to discover in terms of what counts as good behavior. That's one thing the bill doesn't lay out very well. We know that good behavior is not causing problems within the prison, but does good behavior mean helping other prisoners? Does good behavior mean showing that you're trustworthy? I think good behavior can encompass a lot of things. And if someone can be trustworthy within a prison, I think they can pretty much be trustworthy anywhere. So I think that's a great side and a great way to incentivize people to, essentially be the best versions of themselves that they can be, even if they're locked up. Because right now what we see in prisons, or anytime you have a group of people, you will see people sink to the lowest common denominator. And in any situation that's sad, in a prison, it's toxic. So one thing that the First Step Act could certainly be amended to do is to give people the right incentives while they're behind bars.
Okay. Well, I would love to, I'll be following you over at the Washington Examiner to keep up with this. I want there to be substantial prison reform that keeps people who've done low-level drug offenses who are not yet fully criminals, to keeps them out of jail, something that really keeps them away from our more hardened criminals. And then I'd love to see something going on, and I know there are some countries in Europe that already do this, where they're rehabilitating people so that they have an opportunity to redeem themselves. Because as this is Christian radio, Angela, we don't believe that people are like, pieces of paper. Once you've written on it or something bad has happened to it, you just ball it up and throw it away. People can be reformed, people can be redeemed, and they can go on to contribute to society. And we want to see more of that. I don't think we're doing a good job right now. And I was encouraged to see that Texas, and I think it was South Carolina, have already implemented, some of the reforms that are in this package, and they've really substantially reduced their prison population without increasing crime. I want to see more of that, but I don't want to see carjackers going in and getting out for good behavior. If you're carjacking someone, basically because their car is nice, you deserve to be in jail, and early release isn't for you. And I don't care if you've killed someone or not. Most carjackings go wrong when there are children in the car and the person doesn't want to get out because of the kids, and then the carjacker starts killing people. Carjacking should be the one where you get the book thrown at you, and because it's just not even for anything that you need. It's not because you can eat a car. So anyway, thank you so much. Angela Morabito, contributor to the Washington Examiner. Thank you for your expert analysis here.
Thank you so much, Stacey. Have a great day.
You too. All right, we are going to be back with more. In fact, we're going to be coming in with this audio, the bad signs for millennial generation and the adulting school deal. We'll be coming back in with that. Prepare to laugh. Get your tummy muscles ready. Don't be drinking anything because you're going to be laughing when you hear what's going on. This is real. It's actually happening, not a spoof. That's what you're going to hear on the other side of the break. And then me. And then you. We'll take your calls at 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. Be right back.
The Capital One commercial will forever be etched in the ear of the listener. What's in your wallet is a phrase that won't easily be forgotten. But this is not a Capital One plug. I want you to think about the people that are in your circle of influence. Who's in your circle is my new catchphrase, simply because we don't think enough about the people or spirits that we allow into our personal space. Negativity is contagious and fatal. Misery loves company, and it's fatal to your hopes and dreams. I think we all know someone who, no matter what good has happened, always has something negative to say. Ugh, that really bothers me. That bad attitude and that pessimistic spirit will only cause you to do the same. There's no room for doubt, especially if you're believing God to bring that vision to fruition. Now, this is not a license for you to be mean. It is, however, a license for you to assess who's in your circle and make the necessary adjustments. With a heart for the urban family, I'm today's urban woman, Tony Johnson. Connect with us at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Family is an institution set forth by God, one man and one woman for life, with the outflow being children produced by that union. It's obvious to all that there is an attack on the family in our country, and especially on fathers. Whether it's the cycle of sin that persists in our families or the pressure from our government to exclude men from being intimately involved, the strategic battle is on for the souls of men. Join us in the battle to strengthen fatherhood. UrbanFamilyTalk.com.
Listen to Stacey on the Right with Stacey Washington on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp.
I mean, did you hear that?
Pointed.
Remember that you're not only a Christian on Sunday.
And insightful.
Deception and lies have been accepted as the norm from the Democrats.
But most of all, she's on the right.
That scripture from the Bible, it says the heart of the fool inclines to the left. Just kept popping into my mind.
Stacey on the Right. Now heard weekday afternoons from 2 to 4 Central on Urban Family Talk.
I come to steal, kill, and to destroy. You belong to me. Your soul, your mind, and your body. You chose death over life. You are mine, forever and ever and ever.
Hell is real. Matthew chapter 25 verse 46 says there will be those who will receive eternal punishment in hell, but the righteous will have eternal life in heaven with our Savior Jesus Christ. Which will you choose? Let's go deeper at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Well, millennial adults are increasingly heading back to class. They're not pursuing a degree, but rather learning essential life skills. Laura Podesta takes us inside a course on adulting.
I'm going to show you guys how to cut an onion.
At this cooking class in Queens, New York, 29-year-old Elena Tamara says she's finally learning skills she wishes she'd been taught years ago.
I don't know, I was so used to, like, when I was living at home, my mom always cooking and me just doing simple things. And now that I'm on my own, I'm still kind of struggling with it.
She's not alone. The number of classes geared toward teaching adults how to adult is growing. Rachel Flehinger co-founded the aptly named Adulting School in Portland, Maine. This month, she's launching online classes geared toward millennials anywhere who want to know how to sew a button, understand modern art, or tell someone they love them.
How to have a relationship, how to talk to somebody, conflict resolution, how not to fight.
Okay. All right, guys. But that wasn't all. There's more to this little, it's a investigative piece, but it's a little bit of a puff piece because if you think about it, now I know there could be someone who comes from a fantastic home who never learned how to properly cut an onion, but we're talking about the age of the internet and television. All you have to do is turn on Food Network, or if you don't have cable, because we certainly don't, just go to YouTube and type in slicing and dicing or, cutting onions, chopping, how to chop vegetables, and all these videos come up. And within minutes, you can be slicing an onion too. But the question is, what home are you coming from where you never had to help cook? And I know people eat out a lot. I know there are many different types of home situations. And so if that's the type of home you're running, don't get upset with me. I'm not actually attacking you. I'm just saying, at what point does a kid get the skills they need to take care of themselves? And we're talking about the basics, like being able to do their own laundry without destroying everything in their wash. Being able to, and the way to get them to do it is to make them responsible for washing all of the clothes in the house. Theirs and yours. Because if yours are in there and they know they have to be careful not to ruin your clothes, and they're going to ruin a few things. They're going to ruin some towels. They're going to splash bleach on some stuff, and you're going to cope with that. But it's better to lose a few items of clothing when they're kids than to have your kids be that person who can't keep a roommate because they can't do anything and they're constantly expecting their roommate to take care of it for them. And that's what we're seeing. I'm not kidding with you. We have kids, they interact with other people's kids, and there are lots of kids that my kids have interacted with, especially when they go to summer camp, who the kids have never done their own laundry. The kids have never done more than warm up a Hot Pocket. They can't make a sandwich. They can't make a homemade pizza, and they certainly can't fry up a frozen burger or cook scrambled eggs, whip up a batch of pancakes or some muffins. And these are the simple cooking items. We're not talking about making, chicken Madeira where you need a bunch of different ingredients and you have to follow a bunch of steps, or putting together a lasagna, which is actually pretty simple, but again, multi-part instructions. We're not talking about that. We're talking about just the simple stuff like, can you just get the kind of food that you can buy at the store and live? Baking chicken, throwing some rice in with it and some seasonings and having baked chicken and rice. Can you take care of yourself? Can you make more than just the simplest, basic from frozen meals? Can you fry up a steak properly? Can you make side dishes? And that's just the food. The interpersonal relationships. If your child's married to their cell phone 24/7, And I know there was a little bit of backlash about the article that I posted on Facebook last week about the 7 hours a day or 8 hours a day being enough to thin out the cortex of the brain and, you know, reduce the intelligence level and testing ability of kids. And some people were like, oh, that's child abuse. Well, it kind of is child abuse to leave your kid alone with a device and not have any kinds of restrictions on how often they are on it and how much time they get to spend. But there's also, in my opinion, it's a form of child abuse to send a person out into the world, a person who will be seeking out relationships and looking for someone to marry, whether it's a boy or a girl, who can't do the basics like cleaning the bathroom, cleaning toilets, washing dishes, loading and unloading a dishwasher, cleaning floors, cleaning, dusting, doing all the stuff it takes to keep a house clean, and knowing that that has to be done. A person that knows that they need to change their sheets. And it sounds like, if I know you're listening and you're thinking, what is she talking about? Well, the numbers point to this being more common than I would have imagined. Like this is a common issue with millennials. Here's the rest of that audio bit talking about how many of these guys still live at home with their parents and what they're up to. It's number 4.
Experts say millennials are behind because many haven't left childhood homes. The U.S. Census Bureau says in 2015, 34% of Americans between 18 and 34 still lived with a parent. That's compared to just 26% in 2005.
It is more common than living with roommates and more common than living with a spouse.
That translates into young adults marrying later, having children later, and ultimately figuring out those crucial life skills later, too.
What's the most surprising question that someone in their late 20s has come to you and asked?
I'm always surprised about people not knowing what I think are the simple things in terms of knife skills or flavors that may go together.
Chef Kim Colicchio says she's happy to keep teaching classes to help millennials catch up in the kitchen. Better late than never.
So it's true. Better late than never is absolutely true. So if you realize you're short on skills and you want to take a class or you want to go beyond what you can find on YouTube and you take that into hand and you get it done, you know, there are plenty of people who live up in less than ideal family situations and they enter adulthood without a lot of skills and they know they have to make everything up as they go along because they didn't have the foundation at home. Not everyone's going to have that, but speaking to the intact families and families that have, you know, a gainfully employed adult who is looking after their children's best interests, it's not in our kids' best interest to do everything for them. And it feels great. I'm still making my kids' lunches. You know, I've had this conversation with people before where they'll say, oh, you're not making your kids' lunch anymore? I'm like, I haven't made their lunch since they were in grammar school. I stopped making the kids' lunch exclusively, meaning I would make it some days, they would make it some days. We moved to that system where I no longer made it 5 days a week when I started getting complaints about what I was making. When the kids started complaining, I was like, well, if you don't like what I'm making, maybe you'd like to pack lunch yourself a couple days a week and see how it goes. First of all, the complaining stopped. And second of all, they actually enjoyed having a little control over a couple of days a week. And then when we started incorporating those school lunches, and you can eat at school lunch 2 days a week, and then we pack from home 3 days a week, then they transitioned to packing their own lunches exclusively. And I would double check to make sure it wasn't a bag of Fruit Loops and 2 fruit roll-ups, you know, so that it was an actual lunch. And that made them more responsible. And it gave them a sense of, I can do that. I do that for myself. And what was really interesting about it is, so way back when my husband and I were dating and we were on active duty, we had a friend that we worked with. She actually, I think, worked in my squadron. I can't remember the specifics, but I remember going to her place and she had a 6-year-old son. And he had all of his food was actually in a lower cabinet where he could get it. And at 6 years old, he was packing his own lunches because she was a single mom and on active duty in the Air Force. And so their time in the morning was very, very short. They would get up and they'd have to be out the door in a certain amount of time. So the night before, he would pack his lunch. He would also come home after school, and when she would pick him up, they'd come home and he would immediately get his own snack and then start working on his homework. Whatever his homework was, if there was no homework, he would do handwriting exercises or what have you. And I was marveling at it because he was 6 years old. But then when we started our family and I started watching what my kids could do, if I did it for them, then that's how it got done. But if I said to them, you try it, they would quickly learn how to do whatever it was. I mean, kids are amazing that way. So that's why it's disturbing to hear that someone like our kids can make complex dishes. Now, they don't want to. These are not angels. They're not running around saying, oh, Mom, no, let me cook that dinner for you. They're not doing that, but they're definitely able to do it because they've had an opportunity to help with not just the holiday meals, but meals during the week, on the weekend. Some nights I'll just say, it's your night. You're cooking tonight. And I get a little look like, oh, she's serious. But then we always have something interesting for dinner. So, let's let these kids do something for themselves. So we have time for a couple of calls, and then we're going to listen to this audio about the Secret Santa. Remember the guy who was giving out $100 bills? He's back. Only this time he enlisted a homeless guy to help him, and it is the best story ever. So let's first go to the phones. Jerry in New Mexico. Hey, thank you so much for calling into the show today.
Well, thank you, Miss Stacy, for taking my call.
Sure.
I want to address this first thing, the one with the prison release early.
Mm-hmm.
You can release prisoners or educate prisoners. Somebody that steals, and I'll give you an example. If somebody steals the railroad crossing signs, and he goes to prison for that, and then when he gets out, he gets educated, he gets out, and he doesn't have a change of heart, he can go back and steal the whole train. You have to have a change of heart to become a productive individual without resorting back to what you were doing before, because that's all you knew before.
It's true, but that comes from teaching prisoners the Bible and having missionaries coming in and really giving them an opportunity for a heart change. And I know liberals are totally against that, but that has been the most effective rehabilitation method instead of just teaching people how to be better criminals. I totally agree with you. Thank you so much, Jerry, for calling the show today. I'm not sure if we have another caller there. I don't see a name. We can go to that person, or I'm going to go to this next story. All right, so I'm going to go to this next story here. We have this is such a heartwarming piece, and I think we need it as something to kind of move us along past, because we're going to get into more political issues later in the show, but we have to take bites of the good news as well as the onslaught of the kind of negative news that's going on. There are always going to be, news stories about crime, but this story is really special because this is a wealthy man who refuses to allow his face to be on camera. He refuses to allow any accolades to come to him. He wants to be kept secret, but he's been out blessing people, thousands of dollars at Christmas. And it's an example for us. And I'm not saying this as if I don't know that people are stressed during Christmas and trying to figure out how to do Christmas for their own families. We can each do what we can do. But if we've been blessed, we're blessed to be a blessing. And this guy is putting out the ultimate example in how to really he's melting people on the spot with these gifts of $100 bills. Here's the story. It's number 5.
Ma'am, how are you doing today? You ready for Christmas?
A lot of people ignore the homeless, but folks rushing past Moses Elder may regret their haste.
Yeah, I'm blowing it.
Because this week, all people had to do was pay him some attention.
Ladies!
And he would pay them back in Benjamins.
So there's $100 for you.
You can imagine the shock.
$100 for you. Thank you. Oh, that's what Christmas is all about.
Moses' mission was financed by Secret Santa.
Merry Christmas to you, sweetie.
The same anonymous wealthy businessman who every year goes around the country handing out $100 bills to random strangers.
What to do with this?
But this holiday season, in addition to his normal giving, he came here to Phoenix.
Morning. Good morning.
And recruited this most unlikely, homeless elf.
I want to enlist you to help me. Can we do that?
Yes.
All right, so here's what we're going to do.
He gave Moses about $3,000 with the instruction to give it away to whoever he saw fit.
I think this will be a joyful experience for him. It's a myth that, the homeless just take. From my experience, the people with the least give the most of what they have.
We saw that too.
Hey, come here for a minute. Come here.
Danny McCoy put change in the cup, even though he has 7 kids, and until this moment,
There's $100 for you, sir, for showing your kind heart.
had no idea how he was going to buy Christmas presents.
Eternally grateful for what he did.
You are looking for a job?
And that's the kind of relief Moses brought to so many here.
You had that for me.
Most of those he blessed were strangers who just happened by.
God bless you.
And so you can watch the rest of that video over at StacyOnTheRight.com. There's some more in there where the homeless elf, as they were calling him, who was handing out the $100 bills, he actually found some people that he knew who really needed help at Christmas, and he gave them larger sums because he was allowed to do whatever he wanted with the money. And it's just so heartwarming watching it. If you want to have the mist come in and force itself out of your tear ducts, then you'll watch the video. It's fantastic. I'm so glad they put it out there and they took some time to put a good story out around Christmas time of someone giving. And we all have the opportunity to give in whatever way that we feel led to do it. And I encourage, to give into that impulse, give. If you feel led to do it, definitely give in whatever way you feel that you can, beyond what you're doing at church with your tithes and offerings. I'm talking about blessing other people at the Christmas season. It'll make you feel fantastic, and it will be, obviously, you're storing up treasure in heaven when we do for other people for no other reason than the joy of doing it. And that's the music that I hear. So if you're leaving us now, good evening from the Heartland. If you are sticking around, you're going to hear onenewsnow.com news and information. And I'll be back with you right after this.
Family Talk.
There's a lot happening around us. That's why Christians need to stand strong on family values and morality. Hi, I'm Ray Rooney, editor of The Stand, a blog from the American Family Association. The Stand has timely, carefully written articles on relevant cultural issues that you can quickly forward to others. Visit afa.net/The Stand.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. President Donald Trump is keeping up the pressure on Democrats for the wall he wants along the U.S.-Mexico border. On Monday, the president tweeted, "Time for us to save billions of dollars a year and have, at the same time, far greater safety and control." The White House wants Congress to provide $5 billion to build the wall. The continued fight over the wall could lead to a partial government shutdown at midnight Friday. Unconstitutional. That's what a federal judge has said about the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, now that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act zeroed out the tax penalty for anyone not having health insurance. Former Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli of Virginia says it's about time.
My first reaction was finally, although I guess that's not actually true because the judge in my case in Richmond had ruled it unconstitutional as well, but he didn't pull it out root and branch, to quote the majority leader. But this judge said that it's such an intertwined part of Obamacare that the rest of it can't stand without it.
Supporters of the Affordable Care Act are appealing the decision. Concerns are being raised about a move by the Secretary of Education that some believe may be moving the U.S. towards a European philosophy of education. AFN's Bob Kellogg has more.
Jane Robbins of the American Principles Project says the agreement with the Swiss government fits in with Secretary DeVos's vision of merging the Departments of Labor and Education to create a centralized workforce development model. However, Robbins doubts this memorandum is even enforceable.
It's not something that Congress has approved, but it does give us a window into her thinking about education and which way education should be going. And I'm not sure that we like what we see.
Robbins agrees when Breitbart reports this workforce development model of education encourages a view of children as prospective laborers who can inexpensively fulfill the needs of big business.
That is not something that is in keeping with American principles. That's in keeping with 1930s Europe, the principle that the government and corporations, powerful corporations, should be colluding to scratch each other's backs.
One of President Trump's campaign promises involved giving states and local governments more control over education. I'm Bob Kellogg.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has shared his plans for the first 100 days in office for his new term. Speaking at the New York City Bar Association Monday, Governor Cuomo said his agenda includes a new push to legalize marijuana.
We must also end the needless and unjust criminal convictions and the debilitating criminal stigma, and let's legalize the adult use of recreational marijuana once and for all.
The move is a major reversal for Governor Cuomo, who in the past called marijuana a gateway drug. California regulators have canceled a plan to charge a fee for text messaging on mobile phones. The California Public Utilities Commission reversed course after a federal communications ruling last week classified text messaging as an information service and not a telecommunications service. The Federal Telecommunications Act limits state authority over information services. In final news this hour, a 12-year-old Michigan boy's heartwarming gesture for his deceased best friend is getting both recognition and help. Recently, the Detroit News ran a story about Caleb Clackaluck, who'd been best buds with Kenneth K.J. Gross in second grade. K.J. died in May from leukemia. After seeing their finances drained because of medical treatments, the family could not afford a headstone. That's when Caleb went to work, literally. He's been working odd jobs to raise money for a gravestone for K.J. After reading about Caleb's efforts, a funeral home director decided to donate the headstone. David Techner says the story touched his heart, and he decided to follow the young man's lead. Caleb says he's glad. Find more news at onenewsnow.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the One News Now mobile app for Apple and Android devices.
Oh, what's that song we used to sing? Amazing Grace. It was one of them where we sang, Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound.
That saved a wretch like me.
You know, they took the word wretch out. Many people took the word wretch out. They said, because don't say that. That's offensive. But without Jesus, you are a wretch.
Don't miss Bishop E.W. Jackson and The Awakening. Weekday mornings at 9 Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
All the people who make these Hitler comparisons, which are never apt. We should just stop doing that. These Hitler comparisons, 5 years from now, 6 years from now, when this deal holds, we'll come back and say, I said a lousy thing back in 2015.
She's not alone. The number of classes geared toward teaching adults how to adult is growing. Rachel Flehinger co-founded the aptly named Adulting School in Portland, Maine. This month, she's launching online classes geared toward millennials anywhere who want to know how to sew a button, understand modern art, or tell someone they love them.
How to have a relationship.
What a crowd, what power, what beautiful people. I see you all week, and now I have to see you once again to wish you a very, very Merry Christmas.
Now, Stacy Washington.
All right, y'all, welcome back to the show. If you're watching online, share the show, retweet the Periscope, definitely send this out to your friends on Facebook. Let us be heard all over, far and wide, everywhere where there are people who can listen with ears. They should be listening to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. So welcome back to the show. Let's go to the phones. We have someone who held over from last hour. Fantastic to have you on. Andy in Georgia, thanks for holding on for an opportunity for us to hear your comment.
Hello?
Hi, welcome to the show.
How you doing?
Well, what's your comment?
My comment is, based on the prison reform you were talking about earlier, I actually did some time in prison in 5 years, when I was younger. The thing is, I think what we would need in there is some teaching on family structure. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people in there, most of the 99% of people locked up, especially the men, have no idea what it is to be a father or a daddy or a father figure. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it's true. And I think that's a part of some of our other guests that have come on the program have mentioned that is something that is included, which it's kind of life skills type stuff that's included. And that would touch on some of the things that you don't learn if you come from a broken home or a disadvantaged environment. And I think that's very appropriate. But we need to also address this at the root. It's one thing for us to reform our prisons and everything, and we should be constantly looking for ways to rehabilitate people and make them viable citizens upon reentry into society. But we also have to be looking at how we can stop and stem the tide of so many broken families. And we can't stop them all. Human beings, we are fallen creatures. We are not going to be able to have 100% efficacy at maintaining intact families, et cetera, but we could do better. Oh, we could do better. The more technology and advancement we seem to get, the less people seem to understand that it's the very basic tenets that are going to be the most important thing, that we have to hold fast to Christ and then make it our business to stick it out through those tough times and to make our reliance on him the central part of what we're doing every day, relying on God and letting him bear our burdens and take care of these problems, which, if we're not doing that, then how can we even begin to expect good results? So now I want to switch over to Elizabeth Warren. Yes, guys. Remember we talked about how she was going to possibly run in 2020, and now her campaign's fallen apart because people are really upset about her whole I'm an Indian thing. I did a DNA test. I'm totally an Indian, when in reality she's no more Indian than lots of other white people in America, because most white people in America have at least a little bit of Indian lineage in there, if you've been here for a few generations. And so she's trying to figure out what to do. She's really concerned with getting this thing, getting it back on the tracks. It's become decoupled from the tracks, and she's trying to figure out how to get it back going again. And so she says at this meeting that she's at, that she's not actually a person of color. And this is huge for her. It's a total reversal, because I also have audio of her saying she is a person of color. So she's definitely changing her tune. Here she is in number 1.
I'm not a person of color, and I haven't lived your life or experienced anything like the subtle prejudice or more overt harm that you may have experienced just because of the color of your skin. But rules matter, and our government, not just individuals within the government, but the government itself, has systematically discriminated against black people in this country.
All right. So whether or not we want to get into a big, long discussion about systematic discrimination, she's basically speaking to this group of black students. And it's a pivotal moment for her because she's speaking to a largely minority audience. So she's in this space to make amends for what she has said. And she starts off with the declaration that she's not a person of color. And again, we could go for 3 more segments about why this whole focus is wrong and incorrect. There is racism still in America. There will always be some kind of racism because human beings are fallen and we need a savior. Just like there'll always be some shoplifting, some murder, some, embezzlement, any kind of sin there is to get into. If there are people around, they're going to get into it. The problem that she's going to face is that there are too many of the next kind of video going on for her to start cleaning stuff up now. It's just like Joe Biden. Everybody's so excited on the left that crazy Uncle Joe Biden fire your your firearm, fire your shotgun out in the air. Just head out of your front porch. If you hear someone trying to break in, just open your front door and stick your gun in the air and just shoot that rifle into the air. You can't discharge a firearm out into the open air in a suburban area or a public area. That's not allowed to do anywhere. It's the fastest way to get the cops to come over and arrest you. He says you'll scare them off. But with Elizabeth Warren focusing on this at a historically black college, what she's doing is she's laying the groundwork to say that black audiences support her, black audiences have heard her, and they've moved on. She's trying to move black audiences on from her faux pas with the whole DNA test by speaking to black audiences as if we're still in the Jim Crow era. If you're sitting at a historically black college in America today, receiving increased federal funds and assistance from the U.S. government and taxpayers because Donald Trump actually initiated that action after he became president, it's kind of hard for you to accept what she's saying while you're sitting there, or at least it should be. We know for a fact that if we had a black president, which we did, we had a black attorney general, which we did, and Oprah Winfrey still swans among us with her 1,000 oak trees in her property in the front yard of her property in California, and 30 coats of paint on the walls inside because she just liked the essence of having the thicker paint. We know that hard work in this country pays off. It pays off in spades, and not just any old kind of hard work towards a specific goal. It doesn't matter what kind of tan you're sporting or lack of tan. If you're willing to put aside even the things you really, your favorite fun things that you like to do, if you're willing to say no TV until I finish this degree, or no going out and eating out until I finish paying for this extra class or this continuing education or retraining into another career field. If you're willing to sacrifice something to get where you're looking to get to your goal, you're going to get there, and you're going to find people fighting to have you come work for them, fighting for your time. They're going to be interested, and they're going to make room for you, and they're going to demand the opportunity to pay you for your services. That is the focus that we should be having. And especially for graduates at a college or people who are sitting at college and they're working towards their degrees, institutionalized racism is not what it was when Elizabeth Warren's parents were in existence. Now, don't take my word for it. Here she is. Big Chief Liz Warren saying her Indian parents, mind you, if her parents were Indian, she would be more than 0.012 Indian, but I guess facts just don't matter. She says her Indian parents couldn't marry because of white racism. It's number 2.
Actually, you have it wrong about what it is I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start there.
Tell us what it is.
Okay. My mom and dad were very much in love with each other, and they wanted to get married. And my father's parents said, absolutely not. You can't marry her because she's part Cherokee and she's part Delaware. And after fighting it as long as they could, my parents went off. They eloped. It was an issue in our family.
Now, Elizabeth Warren is just as pale as she can get with blue eyes, and God bless her, because that's, there's nothing wrong with being who you are. But her mom was part Delaware and part Cherokee. We now know that to be an utter falsehood. She says she has high cheekbones. So do a lot of people. Indians aren't the only people who have high cheekbones. And irrelevant, now that she put the DNA test out, now all of these previous stories she's told, and we can dig up a ton of them where she's on camera, she knows the cameras are rolling, and she is lying through her teeth about this so-called Indian ancestry. It's not true. So her parents were not forced to elope because her mom was an Indian. None of these things are factual. So instead of focusing on the fact that she has an obsession with being an Indian, let's focus on the fact that she has an obsession with telling lies. Is that someone we want to be the president? For the same group of people who claim to care that President Trump so-called utters lies, which we actually know that's not true. He has been incorrect on a few things like the crowd size at his inauguration, but the other things he's saying are true about the illegal aliens, the rapes, the murders, the kidnappings, the beatings, the gun crimes, all true. The things he said about other countries not being as good as this country, true. The things he said about Mexico not sending their best, true. The things he said about the black community voting for him, what have you got to lose? True. We could go down the list on and on and on. There's hundreds of things that he said that are utterly true, that the media has categorized as false because they're inconvenient to their narrative. But let's just focus on the future. If you're really committed to the truth, then you know that Elizabeth Warren can't be your candidate. She can't be the one that you're voting for because she does not care for the truth. She cares for twisting her own familial history to suit a narrative that makes her more friendly to minorities instead of just owning it. I'm rich, I'm white, I live in Connecticut, my house is worth $4 million, I'm worth a few $1,000,000, and, you know, I want to be the president. I feel just as ordained as Hillary Clinton to be the president, and if I have anything to do with it, I will be the next or first female president, but I'll be the next president of the United States. It won't be Hillary. That's what she should say. And I know that would turn some people off, but I think a lot of people would just be like, and so there it is. There's the facts. Now, do we like her or do we like that guy or do we like, you know, Kamala Harris or Cory Booker or whoever they're going to be putting forward or is creepy Joe Biden the best we can do? All the images of him. I mean, it's a brain trust of images on the internet of him gripping women by the shoulders, sitting behind them in his office at the White House. You know, all of this going on in front of their husbands. The little girls, he's gripping them and sniffing their hair, sniffing their shoulders, going in close for a backwards hug. You know, that's the kind of stuff that would normally get a man punched down to the ground. A dad sees a grown man, old enough to be a girl's grandfather or great-grandfather in his case, hunched over her, leaning in, and she's clearly uncomfortable and trying to get away, and he's got her locked by the shoulders, and he's sniffing her hair. I'm surprised he's never been punched down to the ground. It just hasn't been the right families. And, you know, predators are like that. They can smell the availability, the enablement. They'll go in on kids who they know the parents are just too civilized to do anything about it. But if they see a man who's just basically bathed in testosterone and his daughter is standing there and they want to go in for a little squeeze and grip and sniff, they know I can grip and I can squeeze, but I'm going to get punched down to the ground. I'm gonna lift myself back up with a black eye, and Secret Service is gonna have to haul that man out of here kicking and screaming, and he's gonna break some furniture. So I better not sniff his daughter. That's one of the candidates that the Democrats are gonna put forward for president. I can't wait. If it's him, it's gonna be memes all day, every day. I will not stop sharing them, and I'll probably get booted off, but so be it. I'm gonna have some fun if it's Joe Biden. All right, when we get back, we're gonna have Seton Motley, founder of Less Government. Stay right there.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. Hey, Stephen McDowell has been a personal friend of mine for a couple of decades now. He is one of the best historians I know. He is president of the Providence Foundation, and no one documents early American history, especially the Christian aspect of early American history, better than my friend Stephen McDowell. He is going with us on our spiritual heritage tours, and he'll be talking all along the way and answering questions, and you're going to enjoy spending time with him if you're able to go with us in June or September. Again, we're going to Washington, D.C. and Mount Vernon, and we're also going on a separate trip to Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown. So if you'd like to go on either one of these or both of them, contact us at spiritualheritagetours.com. That's spiritualheritagetours.com.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with The Legacy Moment. Have you ever felt overwhelmed, buried in the blizzard of activities, demands, and responsibilities, to the point where you start responding and reacting rather than doing things intentionally? Well, here's a tip from the president of Campus Crusade for Christ, Dr. Steve Douglas. He says, make a list of all the things you have to do. Then next to each item on the list, you put TP, standing for top priority, HP, high priority, MP, middle priority, or LP, low priority. When you look at the top priority things and you can get those done, there's a feeling of accomplishment and direction. It's important to learn and focus on what is really important to do. Even more importantly, what is it that God wants us to do? Jesus modeled this throughout his earthly ministry. Listen to what he prayed on the night he was betrayed in John chapter 17, verse 4. I glorified you on earth, having accomplished the work that you gave me to do. This is an incredible verse. Look at the past tense, having accomplished the work. When Jesus died, there were more people that needed to be healed. They weren't all his followers. Jesus didn't do everything, but he did everything God called him to do. Too many of us are just getting killed, literally dying, doing good things. The question we need to be asking is, am I doing all that God wants me to do right now? Is this his top priority for me? Well, here's what I want you to remember today. If you're feeling overwhelmed today, just push the pause button. Maybe get an accountability partner and go over your list of stuff that you're involved in and weed those things out. Spend some time praying over them. Then ask God to show you what to do and what to go after.
Join Crawford Loritz tomorrow for another Legacy Moment.
You can download episodes of Stacy on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the show. You can find out more at StacyOnTheRight.com. You can even watch that video of the heartwarming story of the Secret Santa and his elf, his homeless elf, giving out the $100 bills to the strangers on the streets of Philadelphia. You would love that story. It's at StacyOnTheRight.com. And if you go there and you don't want to subscribe, that box that pops up, just click anywhere outside of it and you don't have to subscribe. If you want to subscribe, I welcome you. But if you don't want to, you don't have to subscribe and then unsubscribe later. Just click anywhere outside the box. We are not into forcing people over here at SOTR. So right now it's my pleasure to welcome a good friend of mine, Seton Motley. He's the founder of Less Government. Seton, thank you for joining the show today.
Thank you very much, Beth.
Okay, so let's talk about this. You actually came on the show, and I'm not even going to say how many months or if it was a year or two ago, to talk about this whole net neutrality thing and how everyone was lying about it. And so it turns out that net neutrality was canceled, and Ajit Pai, really, that man is a warrior of the best sort to go through what he went through over something as inconsequential as what this turned out to be. And so you've written over at lessgovernment.com about how the internet is faster than it was when we had net neutrality, which was supposed to make it faster. So talk to us about how this was a huge nothing burger and we should be so grateful.
Well, yes. The first thing we have to keep in mind is for the first 25 years of the internet, there were no net neutrality regulations. And nothing happened bad. The claim is, internet service providers like Comcast and Verizon will block you without net neutrality regulations. Mm-hmm. Well, in 25 years, that never happened. Meanwhile, by the way, who is blocking? Mm-hmm. All Google and Twitter and Facebook and all the companies that want net neutrality regulations on the internet providers, but not on themselves. That being said, so the status quo normal situation for the internet is no net neutrality regulations. The free market took care of it quite nicely. Thank you very much. So when they say, they've ruined the internet as we know it, that's not true. In 2015, Barack Obama unilaterally imposed net neutrality regulations, huge what's called Title II, which means they were regulating the entire network of the internet like a landline phone line, one-to-one connection, which is insane and stupid. Well, a year ago, last week, the Trump administration undid the Barack Obama power grab imposition, which means they just restored the previous 25-year regulatory status quo. And I think speeds are up 40% this year on the internet in the United States. And I think what you may be seeing is it's holdover with the 2015 rules in place until they were repealed last year. You're talking about 2 years plus of these rules in place, and investment went down. Everything you'd expect to go down with more regulations went down. Everything you expect to happen with more regulations happened. And then, it was like getting out of jail a year ago when Trump unleashed it and undid it. And as a result, I think you're getting, if those speed increases were spread out over 3 years without those rules in place, it would have been 10% here, 15% a year, 10% another year. But because it was all jammed up by the regulations, you had this massive explosion increase in speed once the free market was restored to the internet. And all these stories about all these things that would happen a year ago when they rolled back these regulations. I linked, 20, you saw the piece, 20 headlines from a year ago about all the parade of horribles that would happen once the Trump administration undid this. And they undid it, and then a year later, none of those things have come true. And, like you said, and I should have made this point in the piece, it's a very important point, that Trump's head of the Federal Communications Commission, Ajit Pai, who's an Indian guy, his parents are from India, and, the hell he went through and his family went through, and these idiots showed up at his house and were taking pictures inside his house and putting them on the net and all these things, to try to scare him into not undoing these stupid regulations. Well, he undid the regulations, and none of the things they said were going to happen happened, and he had to go through this, which is nonsense. Even if the policy did result in worse conditions for the internet, you don't do that to people's families. I don't care what the hell's going on. So the fact that nothing happened is even dumber. So I just wanted to, and a lot of people have done this on the net, the year anniversary of just looking at this and saying, okay, it's been a year. Well, how'd their predictions turn out? And the answer is pretty inaccurately, to say the least.
So I know this is a question there's really no answer, but I have to ask it because when you talk about people going to people's houses and trespassing and terrorizing, Ajit Pai's family, you're talking about activists who they're convinced that net neutrality. I saw people tweeting about it. They said people will die. People will die if we don't have net neutrality.
Right.
But not only has no one died, the internet's faster, which if you're addicted to the internet like these millennials are and these activists, they're addicted to it. They should be so happy. They should be bowing down to their phones, and they should have the picture of Ajit Pai up while they're bowing down. This is exactly monumentally the opposite of what they predicted. Have you seen anyone acknowledge that this is so and that we don't need net neutrality?
No, in fact, I linked to another 20 stories in the media now since the on or about the year anniversary, where they're still telling the same lies. They're still saying, they say the internet hasn't gotten slower yet.
No.
The internet hasn't gotten more expensive yet. They're pretending that this year of restoration of the 25-year status quo is an aberration. The 26 years of successful internet explosion, because remember, 25 years ago, most people said, what's the internet? And now it's 1/6 of our economy. And it got there because we didn't regulate it like they want to regulate it. And after this 2-year hiatus with this government imposition, we're back to the normal. We're back to increased speeds relatively. Yes, internet has gotten more expensive, but if you extrapolate out the price you're paying 20 years ago and the speed you're getting 20 years ago to the speed you're getting now and the price you're paying now, the price per kilobit is dramatically lower. I mean, it's unbelievable. And so it just keeps getting better and better and better the more we leave it alone. And they don't want to recognize that. I quoted Joseph Goebbels. You have to tell the big lie, big and huge, and you have to shield the people from the truth, because that's the only way you can continue to ensconce the lie. And the truth, it's Groucho Marx. Are you going to believe me or your lying eyes? Am I going to read these 20 stories and hear how horrible the internet's going to be without net neutrality regulations? Or am I going to look at the fact that the internet got 40% faster in the last year without the regulation?
40%, which I have to stress, Seton, that is a monumental increase in speed. If you consider, I remember reading articles about how people in certain other, foreign countries like Japan and places like that had faster internet than we had. And that was because they had something like net neutrality, which I'm I'm completely predisposed to not believe.
What they don't tell you, the dirty little secret on internet speeds, a lot of it is geography, how much geography you have. Yes, Japan has fast internet because they're the size of Rhode Island.
Right.
So they don't have to dig a bunch of trenches, right? They can go end to end. You know, there's a comedian I like from Australia who moved to Ireland. He said, I got guys in Australia that can mow Ireland. And, you know, that's how big Japan is. It's not very hard to connect a country the size of Japan. And then, because once you connect it, then you can start building the speeds. You know, it's why short bodybuilders build muscle faster than tall bodybuilders, because you're building on an arm that's 2 inches long versus building on an arm that's 20 inches long. Well, the United States has a lot of empty space to fill. And the fact that we went up 40% in a year with this much continent to fill is unbelievably impressive.
And I agree. I think it's so impressive that it might be something that I can hear a leftist right now, because this has been done to me on so many issues. When you point out that something good has happened, they'll say, well, that's just not true. What information are you quoting? Where'd you get that information? Right. That's not 40% faster. That's impossible. That's not true. It's obviously a right-wing talking point from Breitbart.
The other thing they denied, and we've gone through both ends of this now. When they imposed the regulations, investment in the internet went down, and they disputed it and disputed it and disputed. Oh, it didn't go down. It didn't go down. It didn't go down. When you could see year to year, the numbers clearly went down. Now, the year after the regulations have been removed, the investment has gone up dramatically. You know, I mean, how do you get 40% faster in a year? Because more money went into the network. I mean, this is not rocket science we're dealing with here, and they're denying that the investment went up since the regulations went away. I mean, you know, as I like to paraphrase the love story, the left never allows facts to get in the way of a good beating.
Well, Seton, obviously you left out one of the reasons why the investment went up, and that's because rich oligarchs were holding back the investment because they don't like net neutrality. But now that they've gotten their way and it's the Wild Wild West, of course they're investing. It's always for the negative, right? It's never because people are just like, wow, this environment's really conducive to me spending money and I want to grow.
Know, and keep in mind, it is this is not a, you know, you've got different antes at different poker tables in the casino, right? This is not a $5 table. It is very expensive to be in the internet business. To build out these networks is a very costly thing. So as soon as it becomes even a little bit less attractive to invest, the rich guys will put their money somewhere else because the return on investment, the margin is very high. The bar of entry is very high, and the margin is pretty narrow. And if you start adding to that already very high bar, you're going to have people who just move their money elsewhere, and that's not good for the internet, obviously.
So I'm interested in, because I love a good win. I love a good story of, you know, leftists say X is going to happen and instead A, B, and C happen. I love those stories. But where do you see them going with it? Because one thing we know, Seton, about leftists is that they never give up. They never die. They never quit. They never give up.
In fact, there's are you familiar with the Congressional Review Act?
Yes.
Well, they're trying. The Democrats have it's called a resolution of disapproval. Now, I don't even know if it's legal because the Congressional Review Act was written to undo regulations you didn't like. They're trying to use it to reimpose regulations that they didn't like having removed. And there's a thing in the House where they're 38 or so votes short of a resolution of disapproval. It passed the Senate. It's a simple majority is all they need. And it passes the House and the Senate, and then the president has to sign it, and then it undoes what the bureaucracy did. No, I don't think they can do that to reimpose regulations, but that's a separate issue. But they're trying it that way. Of course, every leftist group on the planet, including a bunch of governments around the country, are suing to reimpose, saying it's bizarre, but they're saying the Trump administration can't unilaterally undo what the Obama administration unilaterally did. It's like that stupid immigration ruling where Obama just unilaterally stopped enforcing immigration law. Trump reimposes the law as written, and a judge says he can't do that. That's absurd, but you can find judges to say those stupid things. Well, they're trying to do that too. You've got different states, California, Rhode Island, and several other. I think New York is doing it too, where they're passing state-level net neutrality rules, which I think are all unconstitutional because obviously it's a world wide web. So therefore, clearly within the purview of the federal government is to set national internet policy and then go negotiate, interacting with the rest of the planet. You can't have, it's a violation of the Interstate Commerce Clause just to have 50 different state levels of regulation on the World Wide Web, but they're trying that too. I think that argument, the interstate commerce argument, is one of the arguments the industry is trying to argue when they sue to undo the California law. I think it was Rhode Island that did another stupid law, but California, of course, is the biggest. So yeah, they don't. You're right. They don't give up. They're working in multiple tracks to try to reimpose it any way they can. It's unbelievable. Yes, they're relentless.
Well, I'm just excited about a bit of good news because first of all, I've been reading your writing on this and some others who've been really just ahead of the curve on we don't need net neutrality. And I really had an understanding of why we didn't need it. And so I was just waiting on when we get the opportunity to take control again, they'll get rid of this and people will see, they'll have proof that we don't need this. I hadn't really anticipated this level of stupidness.
That's the sad thing. It's like people who are like Ocasio-Cortez promoting communism or socialism. It's 2018, not 1918. We have a century of evidence that socialism doesn't work. Likewise with the internet, we had a quarter century of internet without net neutrality regulations. How'd we do?
Fantastic.
Why are we reinventing the wheel? We know it works spectacularly without it. Why are we trying to impose it?
Well, we can rely on you to write about it and tell us the truth, and we can spread the word. I've posted the link. Everybody please go on and share this story on your Facebook pages. Tell your friends, print it out, and memorize a few of the key points. So when someone says, what we really have to do something about is that net neutrality, just bust them out. Don't be nice. Bust them out. Use Seton's links and his words. Let's get the truth out there. Seton Motley, founder of Less Government. Your piece is over at redstate.com. I'll put it up on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you, sir, for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Merry Christmas.
Oh, Merry Christmas. Talk to you soon. All right, that's Seton Motley, and I'm Stacey Washington, and we'll be back with the last segment of this show right after this.
This is Life Issues with Brad Mattis, president of Life Issues Institute.
My good friend Johnny Erickson Tada's cancer is back, yet she sent me this incredible encouragement. There are countless Bible references telling us that God does no harm to his children, only good. Yet to some, my chronic pain, quadriplegia, cancer, and now this new cancer sure look as though God were harming me. Yes, painful hardships are the dark driving rain of God's sovereignty, but the sunshine of his sovereignty is the depth of faith, seasoned wisdom, unshakable peace, settledness of soul, unwavering devotion to Christ, and the ironclad trust that comes from walking through that valley of the shadow of death. This is the good God is talking about. Friends, please keep her in your prayers.
Follow us on Twitter at Life Issues USA and stay informed, more informed than you've ever been.
There are many ways you can listen to the shows of Urban Family Talk. One of those ways is through our very own app. Whether you have an iPhone or an Android, just go to the App Store and search for Urban Family Talk. You'll have immediate access to 24-hour programming as well as the podcast for each show. You'll be able to tune in no matter where you are. Speaking of tuning in, we have our own channel on another radio app called TuneIn. Cool, right? Urban Family Talk is everywhere. Just download the app and take us wherever you go.
The church has to take the lead in ensuring that men are properly trained for fatherhood.
we have an epidemic in which boys are not growing up with their fathers. So as Christian men, we have to stand in the gap and make up the hedge so that our communities are not destroyed. When we see fatherhood as a blessing and not an inconvenience, we will see children as spiritual weapons in our arsenal. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. Join us in the battle to strengthen fatherhood. UrbanFamilyTalk.com.
This is Just a Minute with Stacey Washington. Whenever a power-hungry activist wants to infringe upon religious liberty, they refer to the separation of church and state, an evil concept created by an activist judge to limit Christian participation in public life. While God does limit the spheres of influence controlled by the church and state, his limitations lead to more liberty. God is head over all and is unsurprised by the goings-on in our society and politics. He has ordained that free men would control their homes, the church, and the state. There is no separation. When godly men rule, the people rejoice. But when evildoers control a nation, citizens groan and wail. There is no substitute for the proper order of our lives and government under God's planning and direction. When Christians pull back, evil flourishes. The Bible mandates Christian influence in government, politics, and public life. It's up to us. I'm Stacey Washington. Find out more at StaceyOnTheRight.com.
This is Stacey on the Right with Stacey Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us today. We have time for calls. It's 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. Best callers in Radioland. Coming in to American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Thanks for being here. You can go to urbanfamilytalk.com and take our polls and read the articles by other hosts on the network. We'd love to have you do that. Hit the like button on Facebook. It's Urban Family Talk. You can find that there as well. There's an app for Urban Family Talk that you can use to listen to our programming. And you can always find us on TuneIn Radio and go straight to either website, afr.net, urbanfamilytalk.com, and you can listen live there as well. On our Facebook streams and all of that, I am working extra hard, and we're going to see it through. It's taking some time, but we're going to have access to streaming onto a platform that will not censor the reach and ability to share, et cetera, et cetera. And so I can't wait until I've got that up and running, but pray for me and the guys who are working on my site. It's not that it's so hard. It's just getting it all together and trying to do it right now. And there's no good time to embark on a new project. So super busy, lots going on. Oh, and I have an update on our tax documentary, the Missouri tax documentary. It is pretty close to being finished. We just did the last voiceover work and on-camera work for me as the host. And so I can't wait to share that with you. It's a success story. It emulates some other states that are far ahead of us in lowering taxation, and it's a great framework for other states that have not yet embarked upon this task, and I can't wait to share it, mainly because it's my first time kind of being in this role on a project of this scale and size, and I hope that it will be a precursor for me being able to do more of this work. It was actually a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. When someone says, hey, do you want to do some interviews? That's what I do every day. Every day I interview people right here on this show. It's a totally different animal interviewing people on camera and traveling to their location. And I just bless the name of the Most High. Thank God that I was able to do it. It was a scheduling nightmare because I also had a huge project going on for a publication for the NRA, writing a piece that required me to do interviews of people by phone remotely. And so I was doing that as well. So lots going on. I thank God for all of it. It's good experience and it was fun to do. It's fun to do work that you enjoy with interesting people and have the opportunity to be asked onto projects like this. So I'm very grateful for these opportunities. And I hope that there will be more opportunities in the future. But right now I want to talk about, so this, Don't get mad now. I don't want to be ending this show on a sour note, and we won't. We'll definitely take calls this last segment. But in fact, we have a story to end on that's upbeat, but we'll also take your calls, 866-963-2037. But this story is a bit of a downer. Use it to motivate you. Super quick. It's out of England, and you know they're further along the spectrum than we are in the dance with socialism and liberalism and progressivism and moving towards that totalitarian state where parents have very little control over their children and no one has control over what they can say in public. And this story, to me, is the epitome of what happens when nincompoops are allowed to be in charge of children, tax money, resources like schools. Never let the nincompoops rule. That should be a motto or a t-shirt. This is out of England. So they're mandating the city council of the English city of Brighton and Hove. So Brighton and Hove, England. It's a population of almost 300,000 people, so it's a big city for England. And their city council has just decided that they're approving new sex education guidelines which instruct students to tell kids beginning at age 8 that boys can have menstrual cycles just like girls. I repeat, because you're probably, as you're driving along and you're listening to me and you're just like, what did she just say? And it doesn't get any more vulgar than this, so you don't have to flip over for the kids. It's that the time of the month bins that they have where they keep supplies to help people who are experiencing the time of the month, those bins for the waste products will also be installed in the male bathrooms on the school premises, and children will be told that menstruation is inclusive of all genders. And you will not be allowed to opt out of that for your kids, and no one will be allowed to tell them anything differently. So they will grow up thinking that men and women all menstruate, which also means that men and women can get pregnant. Right? I mean, so again, Pandora's box, we opened it up with the legalization of same-sex marriage, and now here we are with this drama. Now, there's been significant pushback against the new guidelines. Tory MP David Davies, that's an interesting name, David Davies, said learning about periods is already a difficult subject for children at that age. So to throw in the idea that girls who believe there are boys also have periods will leave them completely confused. Well, it's even more fundamental than that. To throw in the idea that girls can believe they're boys and it's actually true is the problem here. It's mental illness. It should not be validated. Boys don't need bins for time of the month waste products because boys don't have menstrual cycles. I could go on, but I know this listening audience totally gets where I'm at with this. You not only get it, you understand. It's why you have to be involved with these school board officials. And honestly, if you go to your kid's school and the drama like this is going on, and you go to talk to the principal, the teacher, the administrator, you go to the Board of Education and you get a whole lot of drama back, that's when you say, not my kid, not today. You pluck them out. And you either homeschool or you, and I hear already the tuning up. Well, they have friends. Kids have friends. They make other friends. This is about making sure that your child isn't lost in a culture that is out to destroy their Christian underpinnings. And I see this a lot with people who are really obsessed with a certain type of college environment. And they're looking for the prestige of a name or the region where the college is located, or that it's an NCAA Division I or, Division II, or there's something about it that they're tuned into more than whether or not that school will permit their child's Christian worldview to flourish. And it's a battle, and it costs money to send kids to college. And so all of those things play a role. Pray over the decision the same way you're praying over your kids' elementary school or their middle school or their high school. Pray over those administrators. One thing I recommend, and I'm just starting it myself, so no judging here, is Moms in Prayer. If your kid's school has a Moms in Prayer group, plug into that. That is how you can literally, you're the hands and feet of Christ in those buildings, praying over the teachers, the administrators, the facility, the maintenance guys, anybody who works there, all the parents, all the kids, everything they use, the supplies, everything. You're praying over every part of it. And you're doing that on a weekly basis with other moms. And it's an amazing experience. It's a great way to plug in and make friends. If you're in a new building, especially if you've just transferred like we did with a couple of our kids. And you're doing God's work. He calls us into prayer. He calls us into the house of prayer to pray over every everything we see or hear or feel or taste, everything, we pray over it. We're called to do that. So when we are obedient to him and we pray over these buildings, he will do that radical change. So it's either you're going to be in there praying and calling down the gates of heaven on this stuff, or you're going to pluck your kid out and you're going to homeschool or put them in a building where they can have their Christian worldview unmolested, which is exactly what is happening with, they're telling the 8-year-olds that the boys can have cycles as well. Okay. So here is the interesting kind of feel-good piece. In addition to the Christmas story from last hour. So do you want to work 4 weeks but get paid for do you want to work for 4 days a week but get paid for 5 days a week? Well, this isn't in America, you guys. This is in Berlin. Reuters is reporting that even though it sounds too good to be true, companies around the world that have cut their work week found that it leads to higher productivity, more motivated staff, and less burnout. Now, I don't know how this works in America. America is in the top 10 of countries that work the most hours per week. Employees in America, especially salaried employees, usually average between 45 and 50 hours a week. The more money a person is paid, the higher up in their profession they go, the more hours they spend working. They literally, you're getting paid for your experience and your time and grades, your education, what you're bringing to the table. But the more they're paying you, the more likely you are to be working those additional hours above 40. So this is an interesting story because it's coming out of Europe. It does not take into account American work ethic and the expectation from American employers that you would do more than what they're paying you for. That is across the board. I've never worked anywhere where the people that I work for didn't expect me to do something more than what I originally was brought on to do. So what happens is they see you can do it and they're like, oh, well, obviously you're going to keep doing that. We like that. Thank you for doing that. And then you're thinking, well, I'm not getting paid for that. Well, you are. You're getting paid for that because you're getting paid to work there. And working and doing that will set you up for advancement later. But that is a uniquely American type of a thing. And I think in Japan, they're really big on that too. They just work and work and work and work. So anyway, Jan Schultz-Hofen is the founder of the Berlin-based project management software company Planeo. They introduced a 4-day work week into the company's 10-member staff earlier this year. Now, again, a tiny company like that, I don't know if you've ever noticed this before, but I've noticed it recently. If you go to the workplace of someone who owns their own small business and it's an employer with 20 or less people or even 50 or less people, you might notice that the building, like the interior at least, really reflects that person's personal style. And they have a lot of things that larger employers don't have, like they order in lunch 2 or 3 days a week. It's on the company. And they're ordering it from places that the people who work there like. It's not just, they're just not ordering pizza. You'll notice that the decor, like they might have low lights. If people that work there don't like bright lights, they'll have low lighting. It's like an extension of their house. In the holidays, they have all kinds of fun things up, on the walls, decorations, etc. And a lot of large employers have this too. But I'm talking about these smaller employers. It's like they set their workplace up like an extension of their home so they're comfortable there during the day. Which is why in these smaller workplaces, you would see a 32-hour work week working for full-time employees because they're already willing to do almost anything because they love working there. They love working in an environment like that. And they're usually the very best people. So in New Zealand, an insurance company, Perpetual Guardian, reported a fall in stress and jump in staff engagement when they tested the 32-hour work week earlier this year. And even in Japan, this is in this story by Reuters, the government is encouraging companies to allow Monday mornings off, although other schemes in the workaholic country to persuade employees to take it easy have had little effect. So, Japanese people are not just going to be jumping off and not working, but they have had some success with suggesting that Monday mornings be used for something personal and then coming into work. Now, Britain's Trades Unions Congress, TUC, is pushing for the whole country to move to a 4-day work week by the end of the century, and this drive is supported by the opposition Labour Party. The TUC argues that a shorter work week is a way for workers to share in the wealth generated by new technologies like machine learning and robotics, just as they won the right to the weekend off during the Industrial Revolution. They say it would reduce the stress of juggling working and family life and could improve gender equality. You lost me there, bros. Lucy Green, trends expert at a consultancy called J. Walter Thompson, said there's a growing backlash against overwork, underlined by a wave of criticism after Tesla boss Elon Musk tweeted that nobody ever changed the world on 40 hours a week. I mean, he's kind of unpopular in some circles, and so anything he says is going to be a firebrand and ignite a lot of negative backlash. But I think there's something to be said for people being obsessed with unplugging from digital things, from their screens, from, people wanting to find time to get back outside, to get into their own pursuits. If you have a lot of free time, you don't feel as if it's being infringed on by work. But if you have lots of activities and, commitments that you have to answer to outside of your work, then any time where you're not on your screens and you're not doing that stuff really can have a really positive effect on you. It can ease your stress and really kind of just send you into a place where you're enjoying things more. And I do believe people enjoy their work more when they don't feel as if they're always working. So if you have a clear delineation between work and then I'm off now, I'm not working. I'm working now, I'm not working now. Those clear boundaries can help with the enjoyment of work and the enjoyment of time off. Recent survey of 3,000 employees in 8 countries, including the United States, Britain, and Germany, found that nearly half thought they could easily finish their tasks in 5 hours a day if they did not have interruptions. But many are exceeding 40 hours a week anyway, with the United States leading the way, where 49% said they worked overtime. So I was right. All right, that's the show for today. God bless you from the Heartland. Citizens, I'll be back with you tomorrow. Have a great evening.